All right, y'all, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are turning 50 in November. Yes, thank you. And a recent addition of good news is that Ra Malika is going to be one of our performers at our birthday party. We are going to have some dancing, some music, some poetry on November 2nd to get us hyped for what is going to be, no doubt, an intense week. And we're going to have stuff throughout election week. And then on November 9th, we're going to have an in-store party and sale. So come out, celebrate with us, be in community, and have a good time on a hard week, probably. Either way, no matter what. But tonight, we're here for some humor, which is also much needed. We're here to celebrate Sass, Black Women's Humor and Humanity. It is the new book by J Finley. We are here with J Finley. Yes. In conversation with Ra Malika Imhotep, who is one of our favorite conversation partners and favorite people. Ra has been in conversation with many brilliant folks. And so I'm going to introduce Ra, and then Ra is going to introduce Jay, and we're going to go from there. So Ra Malika Imhotep, PhD, uses Ra, they, them, doll pronouns, is a Black feminist writer and cultural worker from Atlanta, Georgia. They received their PhD in African Diaspora Studies and New Media Studies from the University of California, Berkeley, and are currently an assistant professor of global African Diaspora Studies at Spelman College. Their work looks at the ways Black feminine figures across the African diaspora subvert preconceived notions about Black womanhood and labor through aesthetic practice. Their theoretical and epistemological investments, you never, like, once you start reading the bio, you're like, oh, I'm going to edit this next time. This is the last line. No, it's important. You worked hard for this PhD, so we're going to read the whole thing. Epistemological investments lie in transnational Black feminisms, undisciplined methodologies, Black queer theory, disability justice, and performance studies. So y'all give it up for Ra Malika Imhotep. And we're going to kick it over to Ra so that Ra can introduce their friend.
Thank you. You honor me in so many ways, but I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to realize this dream. I really love how Charis is always down for my pitches, including my first pitch was for my poetry book. Anyway, so before we get into the sass of it all, I want to bring J Finley. We're gonna turn this into a Chitlin circuit venue for a second, you know what I'm saying? But like a modern contemporary one, you know what I'm saying? But I want to welcome Jay to kind of invite us into her world and her practice.
Okay, yeah, here I come too. Let me get this cord out. But you probably want to sit in the front row for this thing. You don't want to sit on the side. That's right. Thank you. Now we got somebody in the front row to heckle. So welcome, y'all. I want to say thank you all so much for coming out. Y'all could have been anywhere, but here you are, and I appreciate it. I know y'all came out for the book reading and the discussion, and we will. But first, I prepared a little bit of jokes for y'all, and that's right. But in the words of the great Erykah Badu, keep in mind, I'm an artist. Exactly. So let me tell y'all a little bit about myself, if I can, for a little bit, because I know I got a lot going on up here. You see this? What it's giving? Thank you. I appreciate you. Because what I wasn't going for geriatric millennial who's going to a Blink 182 revival. But I half true. I embrace the elder millennial. I do. So some other things. I got a white wife. Hey, shout out to the interracial lovers in the house. It's just me. It's just me. Even better, we got 2 kids. We got a black baby and a white baby. That's right. Shout out to the white kids. who who else got white kids? Oh, it's just me. You better shout out your kids. So so my wife, she gave birth to our daughter, and she's named after her great grandmother. Her name is Inga. That's a whole 4-letter mouthful of a name that she got, you know. But she's cool. She's 4 years old, so we've had to start teaching her some things. You know, we had to start teaching her how not to be a Karen, for one. You know, like first and foremost, no, baby, you don't need to carry around your own personal set of comment cards. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I don't care that your hash browns is only smothered and not covered. Tell you what you're not gonna do. You're not gonna ask to speak to the manager. My son, though, you know, he's black, obviously. But he's that like Blake Griffin, Maya Rudolph, Sarah Jane from Imitation of Life kind of black. You know what I'm talking about? For real, he's the type of black that's like, you know, he have you saying, "Hey girl, so is his hair is it kinky or is it tangled?" You know, it's cool though. It's cool because oh, welcome, come on in. So my son, so he got that light complexion, but he gonna have that dark skin consciousness. You know what I mean? He got a curly head, but he gonna have a nappy mentality. Him and his little white sister. Listen, first and foremost, he ain't got no daddy. Hey, listen, it's on purpose. Hear me out. The way I see it, he's breaking the ain't shit daddy cycle, him and her, by not having one at all. You know what I mean? So, can you imagine though? Speaking of ain't shit daddies, if Elon Musk was your daddy, you would be out here with a name with all consonants and numbers. You'd be like, "Is that a name or a Wi-Fi password?" Well, I mean, then what else can you expect from the dude who invented the Tesla Cybertruck, though? Y'all seen one of them things? Y'all see him rolling around in Atlanta and stuff? You know, you just seen the one. Oh, we got them everywhere. You know, they look like one of those stainless steel refrigerators on wheels, $150,000 ice box, and you know, just like a fridge, just like all smudged with the fingerprints and stuff too. Probably got some good snacks in there though. Elon Musk, he's out there riding as hard as he can for Donald Trump. I got to cough when I say his name because you know, but he is. But you know what? The Kamala, she got people out here revving her hard too. You know, for the DNC convention, y'all saw that last week. It was cool because she had a lot of stars. She had people out for her. Barack, Michelle, Pink, and listen, you know, so Stacey Abrams, so she was supposed to give a speech at the DNC, y'all. That's right, she was, but you know, she rehearsed her speech with Kamala's people. She rehearsed it for them. It started the bulge in Doug Emhoff's Dockers, and they was like, "Nah, girl, no, no, we need you out on these streets registering voters." Listen, she had more of them too. She was like, no, but wait, I can start again. And she was like, it was after hours in the situation room. And they were like, nah, Stacey, we gonna bring on Pink. So Barack Obama was good though. He had some good jokes. You know, he had that joke about Donald Trump. That's right. And listen, I'm gay as the day is long. But when he was up there telling that joke, you could tell Barack is blessed. He was up there. It was like he was channeling Bernie Mac. If I pull my shit out, the whole room get dark. Can I say that at a feminist bookstore? Yes. So, let me. I got a last question for y'all. You all ready? for the end times. He said, "Oh, so you must have seen those giant Costco apocalypse buckets. Y'all seen those? Listen, it's like a great big bucket. It's like freeze dried, 25-year shelf life, big bucket of food. Just freeze dried enchiladas and chop suey and such. That's the DEI bucket. The regular one just got a whole mess of Swedish meatballs and Oreo cream. Not the cookies, just the white part. Um, but yeah, just imagine the balls of people who think they're gonna make it 25 years into the apocalypse. Like there are people like that, like your neighbor who like had a shit fit when his dish TV broke during the SEC championship. Like this dude's making it 25 years into the apocalypse because that's the target for those apocalypse buckets. Or those people who keep their thermostat at between 68 and 71 all year round. Like them people gonna make it into the apocalypse? My black ass, I'm prepared to die. Listen, I've seen the beginning of every single horror movie. No, you know what's gonna happen, but I might manage to make it into one of them cyber trucks though. I heard they got snacks in there. Okay, thank y'all. Y'all been great.
I'm really into interracial life.
Well, I thought you were giving that, So I was like, let me put some interracial jokes in here.
But no, thank you for what's the word for like consecrating the oldest chitlin circus, the oldest feminist chitlin circus spot in the South. Okay, Charis Books and More. Yeah.
This is the and more.
And more. So I'm gonna read your official bio now, as you present to your scholarly public. J Finley is a critical scholar who studies Black women's history, performance, and cultural expression. In addition to teaching courses on the history, theoretical, and critical aspects of humor and comedy at Pomona College in the Africana Studies department, she also teaches her students the practice of stand-up comedy based on her own experiences as an amateur performer and the knowledge she's collected from working with professional comedians and comedy educators. She is a co-founder of the Critical Humor Studies Collective, which is an organization dedicated to the study of humor and power. Her first book, which we are here to celebrate, Sass, Black Women's Humor and Humanity, presents the first ethnographic study of Black women's humor, offering a comprehensive reading of its personal, poetic, and political dimensions from slavery to today. And I just have to say, that's what we're trained for on the 6th floor of Barrows Hall in UC Berkeley, or the Social Science Building, my bad. That reach, right, all the way from the time of enslavement to the now, right, including the immediate now where you are in your own embodiment doing the work. Thank you for saying yes.
Thank you for inviting me and sending out the vibe to come.
Yeah, I'm like always, as indicated, I'm always plotting and conspiring on ways to like bring the folks here into this space, which is so special to me. But I'm so moved. I think something that we share in common is this connection between performance practice and research practice. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how those worlds came together for you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you all for coming, for being here and listening to us talk about this work and having a conversation with us about this work. So I'll talk a little bit. So what you all just saw was I just prepared that for today. So that was like some jokes that I just wrote for this occasion. And so usually that's how my practice really works. I have a long log of jokes, and sometimes I pull from stuff. I say, hey, where am I going? So if you notice today, I did like a little, a smothered and covered joke for the Waffle House for the Georgia folks. I did a little Stacey Abrams situation. I like to do a little topical stuff. There was a DNC. And the way that I learned how to do it was I learned how to write and perform stand-up comedy as part of my research when I was writing my dissertation. And so It just started out. I mean, I had literally no experience, but the way that I saw it, so the work that I was doing was primarily on Black women's stand-up comedy. And the way that I saw it was, hey, if I'm going to be studying it, if I'm going to be examining it critically, why can't I try to do it? Like try to do it. So I feel lucky and blessed that I don't need to be paid for it. Okay. As you all can see, I feel happy about that. But I feel like it really challenged me to really do more than just read the jokes and read Black women's humor, because there's something about making it thinking about what does it mean to connect with people? What does it mean to be a Black woman trying to go out into the world in a room full of people who I don't know whatsoever and connect with them on the level of trying to create a feeling in them, right? To try to make them laugh. And so that gave me a lot. It gave me incredible insight that I can't get anywhere. You can't get it in books. And so that's what I really wanted.
Yeah, and that's drawing on such rich histories of like performance ethnography and yeah, just what it means to really not see yourself as completely outside the conditions that you are studying. It's very Black studies, it's very much part of the way Black studies interrupts, right, some of the like mainstream academic conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked a little bit about this question of interdisciplinarity, and you have a really rich like orientation towards what that means and like how it shows up in your own identification as a scholar.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the work is interdisciplinary. So that means that I draw on different methods from different fields. So sometimes I'll do like textual critical analysis of text. So I'll watch some comedy, stand up or sketch, or even somebody at on a corner. I was in Edinburgh this summer doing some research, and there was comedy everywhere in like bars, coffee shops, everywhere. So really looking at it as a text, but also thinking about the embodied performance of it as well. But I've also done archival research. So the first and my favorite archive that I went to for this project was Shirley Chisholm's archive at Brooklyn College. And that was where I found one of the most incredible pieces of humor that it actually doesn't appear in the book. It's in an essay that I wrote, but it was about her experience when she was first a congresswoman. And so she used to get, those old white, especially the Southern congressmen would really, they would do stuff to just like, poke and prod at her and make her feel like she didn't belong every day. And so one of them would come every day and he would take a handkerchief and he would sneeze it in front of her face, And so one day she came back and she had her own handkerchief and she sneezed in his face first. And it really tickled her to do that, right? To really speak back to him in a really visceral way. And so that's so that interdisciplinarity of looking at Black women's humor from a variety of perspectives is fundamental to the work I do. But it's also, you can see it in the theory that I created in the book of Sass as a discourse genre. Because if we're thinking about Sass, I think about it as sort of a range of expressive tactics, expressive tools that can be made use of in conditions of constraint. So if it's like, so that means that it's coming from all types of perspectives, right? Like, so if you read my book, one of the things that I hope you go away with is this idea that Sass is not an identity. It's not, a personality trait, but it's something that happens in the moment. And I hope that people will begin to see that I hope they see it everywhere.
No, thank you so much for that. It is truly rich to think about Sass, as you say, as a discourse genre, not prescribed to any particular body, right? But before I get there, because that's a whole other juicy corner of discussion, I think, humor and humanity, and this emphasis on humanity, I think, is part of what brings you into the political, right? And into the historical record of slavery. Something I've been sitting with and like really had to put the book down when I read it is your reading of Fannie Lou Hamer's suppressed DNC speech. And of course, in this moment, right, we're thinking so much about that as we process or ignore, or I'm bombarded with all the like egregious things that happen in and around the DNC. But in your recounting of Fannie Lou Hamer's speech, you pull out these elements of Sass, not only in her disposition, but in the story she chooses to repeat. I would love if you could bring us into that.
Can should I read from that part? I'll read from that part because a just to do it justice, and also so you all understand. So this is in the first chapter, and this is one of the things that I really love about the work too, is that it's there's some surprising things. I was surprised. I surprised myself, to be honest. Surprised myself, and one of the ways that I surprised myself was with this reading, which is honestly one of my favorite readings. It's I would say it's definitely top two.
Yeah.
And it's in the first chapter. The first chapter is called "Never to Be Conquered: Sass, Subjection, and Black Women Self-Possessed." And so I begin this chapter with a quote from Harriet Jacob, and she says, "The war of my life had begun, and though one of God's most powerless creatures, I resolved never to be conquered." And so then I begin, and I'll read for just a little bit. American treasure Fannie Lou Hamer put her body and livelihood on the line in her mid-40s as an activist from the Mississippi Delta, working in the Black freedom struggle during the 1960s and 70s. Hamer is most remembered for her efforts to secure the vote for Black Mississippians during the 1960s. Despite the ongoing threats of violence and terror from the state and racist vigilantes, Hamer was a field organizer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to agitate for the Black vote in Mississippi. She became the face of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, an integrated alternative to the mainstream Democratic Party, which rose to oppose or be seated along with the all-white delegation sent to the DNC to represent Mississippi and Atlantic City in 1964. So, of course, Hamer is known, and so I'll read from a little bit. I'll go a little bit later on. But so I talk about how she first tried to register to vote in 1962, and how she was denied, and so she continued to try to register people to vote. And one day her bus was stopped, and it was like outside the town that she was from. And her and the people who she was with, they were taken off the bus, they were taken to the jailhouse, and they were brutalized, right? And so she recounts this experience in that 1964 DNC speech. But not only that speech, he also recounts that a number of other times in interviews. So you know how important it was, that it wasn't just for the DNC interview, but this was really an important moment in her life. You can tell that this really affected her. This experience that she had when she was arrested from that bus, it really impacted her. And so she talks about this. And so I'll read from that, from her account. She says, "They left my cell, and it wasn't too long before they came back. He said, 'You're from Ruleville, all right?' And he used a curse word. And he said, 'We are going to make you wish you was dead.' I was carried out of that cell into another cell where they had 2 Negro prisoners. The state highway patrolman ordered the first Negro to take the blackjack. The first Negro prisoner ordered me, by orders from the state highway patrolman, for me to lay down on a bunk bed on my face. I laid on my face, and the first Negro began to beat. I was beat by the first Negro until he was exhausted," etc. And then so she goes on, and then she says, "All this on account of we want to register to become first-class citizens. And if the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America and the land of the free, the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings?" And so she's in the cell, right? And so she's been brutalized. And so she's been beaten. And at one point she can hear someone else being beaten in a cell that's adjacent to hers, right? And so here I say that this interaction, yet there's another portion of her testimony that is crucially important for the way it demonstrates the nature of Black women's sass as an enactment of her humanity toward liberation, the foundation upon which political action can be carried out. The interaction Hamer describes, quote, illuminates the entanglement of slavery and freedom and offers a glimpse of the futures that will unfold, end quote. So before her beating commenced, actually, so this was before her, sorry. Hamer endured an excruciating wait. After I was placed in the cell, I began to hear sounds of licks and screams. I could hear the sounds of licks and horrible screams. Being forced to listen to others brutalized instilled fear and terror. Yet what Hamer heard, in addition to the sounds of blows and cries, was a chilling interaction between the police and Anel Ponder, a Southern Christian Leadership Conference activist who had also been arrested that day. This interaction was surely familiar to Hamer, reminiscent of the antebellum master-slave dialectic that still characterized Southern life in the mid-20th century. And I could hear somebody say, "Can you say yes, sir, nigger? Can you say yes, sir?" And they would say other horrible names. The woman's response, a response that inverted that very same dialectic, no doubt had an overwhelming effect on Hamer, enraging and frightening her, but also strengthening her resolve to endure, even in the face of torturous brutality. She said, "Yes, I can say yes, sir. So we'll say it." She said, "I don't know you well enough." They beat her, I don't know how long. And after a while, she began to pray and ask God to have mercy on those people.
Ooh. It is, like I said, I read that and I had to put the book down because it surfaces that what you're doing under the name Sass is not a frivolous thing, right? It's not like, as you say, it's not about the construction and deployment of the sassy Black woman as a trope, right? It's about a kind of, like you said, refusal of subjugation, refusal to be conquered. And in that moment, yeah, I don't know. It's like a quick, and it doesn't end the suffering, right? I would love to hear your thoughts about that. Like subverting the master slave dialect, it doesn't guarantee freedom, right?
Absolutely.
But it does do something.
Well, it does do something. So this is like sort of the what holds my argument together is that Black women's humor and humanity are fundamentally linked, and we can see it when they deploy Sass, right? Because here, Sass, so if you look in this moment, what she was doing was she was owning herself. She was owning herself in that moment and saying, "Hey, you know what? You can beat me. You might even kill me, but I'm going to let you know that what you're doing is killing a human being and not an animal." And not a beast, right? And so you all, I heard you chuckle a little bit, right? So if you are familiar with those kinds of conditions, right, that which frames Black women's experiences of constraint, historically speaking, that might be funny to you. And not because you understand it as like, you know, Sass as like some panacea, right? Like it's not the cure. It's not gonna actually like fix the thing, right? But if there's no consciousness of oneself as a human being,
right,
there's no liberation. There's no liberation at all. And so I feel like this is a moment where we can really sort of, I feel like it's pretty crystal clear in this moment.
Yeah, in that chapter, another example you lift up is an example I'm deeply acquainted with in my own work, the figure of Topsy. As played by Black actresses, and how that opens up a different kind of possibility. Do you have any additional offerings on like that kind of switch? And I know we're like in the whirlwind of Jana Brown's brilliance, but I really like how you incorporated that into your understanding of Sass.
I like that reading because you can see sort of the subversive nature of Sass. You can see how it really, so underneath the humor of what happens. So Topsy is this character in Uncle Tom's Cabin, and she's like the unruly child who, she keeps getting Miss Ophelia in the book. She keeps on, she's just like, oh Lord, child, you're just like, you're so unruly, and she just like beats her, right? But in these staged plays, when Black women finally could play the character, because it used to just be white women, white people in blackface, who would play Topsy on stage, right? But then eventually, like in the mid 19th century, Black women were allowed to play the character. And so what Jana Brown says is, hey, they actually imbue this character Topsy, even though she's playing this stereotypical role, they actually like have a little bit of humor on the side, on some sly humor that really gets through some particular kinds of knowledge, like some critiques. And so what I like about that is this idea that, Topsy or Black women, Topsy or Black women's subversive humor produces a particular kind of knowledge, right? So Topsy can't be, so she gets hit, so they keep on hitting her, but she keeps popping back up, like she refuses to suffer. And so that becomes, really funny, so she becomes impervious to pain, but she becomes also in these moments like you reckon with the fact that the relations of power that creates a Topsy who can be beaten and brutalized by this, this white mistress. And so that's what I like also about Sass, is really that you can find, once you're done laughing at it, right? So once y'all was done chuckling about Anel Ponder, right? What that makes you do, the knowledge that is produced that made you laugh, really, it comes to the surface. Like, damn. Like he really did try to like beat a whole grown woman who said, who told you right in that moment that she was a woman, a person. So
yeah, I think there's something like in Topsy is just one example, but Black women's humor as a way to like reclaim maligned or like parts of Black womanhood and Black femininity that are thought of as beneath us, particularly in the project of like racial advancement, or what? Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
So how, even in your study of contemporary comedians, how have you come across kind of like improper forms of womanhood in the performance of Sass?
Yeah, you got it. You know what? My other aunt yesterday asked me a really good question at this talk that I was giving. It made me really think. She asked me this question about if people know that they are, performing Sass, and if they then use that intentionally as like sort of part of their act. But it made me think about the intentionality. It made me think about how Black women have something to say, and not in like the monolithic Black women have something to say, but individual different Black women have something to say. And how at many points in history and today, there are all of these constraints on who it is we can be, what it is we can say, how it is we can say it, what it is we can look like when we say it, the kind of language that we can use when we say it, right? And so that's really sort of one of the through lines throughout the book, is thinking about how Black women challenge this idea of improper Black womanhood. So you can see it in the chapter that I write about Black women's raunchy humor. You can see it in the chapter that I write about Black butch women and this concept that I call butch sass, right? So a lot of times Black women's sass is really aimed at undercutting this idea that Black women have to be this particular thing in order to be a proper kind of woman, in order to be a lady. And the classic one is in my favorite comedian, Adele Givens, in her tagline, "I know what you're thinking." I'm such a fucking lady. That was for you, Leah. But also, Black butch women, right? Black women who embody, who have like a masculine sensibility in our presentation of self. How is it that we challenge that with our humor, and how in fact does Sass, how does that function as a tool that enables people to really see that and really understand that Black womanhood is really just like such a multitude of experiences.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so rich. I'm like, I'm like wanting to move past the first chapter, but I'm
Oh, it's
so
cool. No, we
obsessed
can.
with it. Can we talk about Moms Mabley, please? Which I think also gets us to this interesting relationship with Butch Sass, right? And you talk about how her masquerade, her old lady drag, right, enables her to do a certain kind of thing that her kind of at home presentation in her Butch body probably wouldn't allow in the same kind of public sphere.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Moms Mabley, Moms Mabley, she was like the longest performing black woman comedian from the 1930s until she died in like 1974. And so she was in her regular everyday life, she dressed like, well, she was flyer than me, but she she dressed like me. So she wore like men's suits and men's clothes. She kept her hair closely cut, and she had girlfriends. People knew in the entertainment industry that Moms Mabley was a lesbian, and but on in her stage in her stage persona. She put on granny drag, right? So she dressed up like an old granny. She had on the floppy hat, the dress, the big old shoes. She took her teeth out of her mouth and put them in a jar next to her when she performed. And so that really enabled her to affect this character who was like, familiar to people. She was like a familiar black. She was like an old black granny. And so, but underneath that old black granny, she would be able to slip in this really sharp political critique. And if she had been, and at that time, this thing wasn't it wasn't mainstream at all. And so what would it she would have been challenging ideas on a lot of different levels. In fact, I don't even know that she would be able to have made those critiques had she been in her her regular everyday life.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, we know that happy Black Pride, everyone. This is the weekend where we observe one of the 5,000 prides that we celebrate in Atlanta. But like we know that queer cultures are rife with humor and camp. And so it's not to say that Moms Mabley and her butch self, along with Gladys Bentley and all them, wasn't cracking jokes and being funny and humorous and employing sass. But what you bring out so beautifully in the book is that she's able to push political buttons because she's embodying the Black grandma, which indexes the Black domestic. Like she is in, as you just said, this very familiar performance of self. I know that I'm like mindful because we gotta let people ask questions, but I got some more time. I want to think with you about memification, right? And kind of Black sass as it is like captured, both like for fun, for good. I be using all kinds of Oprah gifts and things like that in my text message, but also how they circulate beyond Black counterpublics, or if that even matters, right? So I would just love to think with you about the memification of sass.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And for one, because I really feel like the sassy Black woman, which is the idea that I try to debunk and disabuse you as readers of, is I think that was the original meme. And I think that in the age of digital reproduction of AI, I don't think that image of Black women or Black womanhood is going away. And that's the sassy Black woman is really the image, is really the idea of Black women's humor and humanity divorced. That's an object, that's a thing, that's something that you can use to sprinkle on something and give it flavor, right? That's like an incredible amount of affect with nothing underneath, right? That doesn't really produce any knowledge in the world. All the knowledge that you need to know about it is already produced in the image. But my idea of sass, that is this fundamental, the idea that there is intentionality and meaning that is produced in every enactment of sass, and it always indexes a critique of power.
Yes.
You can't memify that. You can't memify that, and that's because you can't memify like anything that's in this room, because we're alive and living here and experiencing it together. And so hopefully one of the things that will happen is, you check the book out, and you start seeing Black women's humor everywhere. And you start seeing Sass in a new light in different ways, and you start really thinking about, what's under, why is it being carried out, what is the this is the thing, is it's difficult at times because it's very complex sometimes, but it's very simple other times, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and I can vouch, like, this book does truly open up. Even if a lot of, we know Sass when we see it or hear it, but like you said, you see it everywhere, you hear it everywhere. One example I had shared with you, and even was like kind of really aggressively sending voice notes to my friends about, was one the Kamala Harris horrible PR moment where she said, "If you want Trump to win, say that. If not, I'm talking." And how that was an invocation of a particular kind of, like, Black Mama Sass hand spanking, that was actually, it did reveal the paradoxes of empire, but in an inverse way. And then another example you had mentioned to me was Michelle Obama at the DNC. So would you like to say anything about?
Yeah, I'll say something quickly about that. Just because I think there's a couple of interesting moments to see how that Sass functions. Now, by the way, what you'll also notice is that not all Black women do Sass. What I'm saying is that what makes Black women's humor coherent is the element of Sass. That's what I'm saying. But when it comes to Michelle Obama, you'll also notice that Sass changes over time, right? When conditions of constraint change, expressions of Sass change. So you can see Michelle Obama, for example, there's a part of the book where I talk about she's sitting next to John Boehner, who was the Speaker of the House at the time. Y'all remember this? It was a meme. And so she, like, nobody knows really why she, like, cut her eyes at him, but it was like in the news, it was like Michelle Obama rolls her eyes at John Boehner or whatever. It was like, you don't really know why. But what you do know is that she's the first lady. She's the first Black first lady. She talks about it a lot, how she couldn't say some of the things that she really, really wanted to say, but she would slip in a little bit of something. Like if you literate in Sass, you would have understood, and it might have made you laugh. But at the DNC, listen, the conditions of constraint are different for her. They're different. So she can say things in a new way. And so when she went up there and she said, she was talking about Trump, and she said, what was the joke? She said, well, who's going to tell him? Who's going to tell him that, that job that he's applying for just might be one of them Black jobs? And so if you find the Sass in that, you'll find that it's also for herself, right? She's locating herself as, like, she's indexing that experience that she had a long time ago, and probably her whole life, but especially when she was the first Black first lady. But also it's also collective as well, because she's talking about Black folks, and the Black jobs that Trump referred to, right? So individual expressions of Sass and that critique of power can open out into a more collective expression.
Yeah, and it was, I was a conscientious objector to watching the DNC, but I did see the Black Twitter discourse, and people was like, "Oh, Michelle had the oils on for that speech."
Hey, but listen, I'm teaching a class on Black women and pop culture. I couldn't turn it off.
It's a rich text for sure, and like you're saying, when the constraints are different, like Obama couldn't make dick jokes like however many years ago, right? And like that's not necessarily Sass, but it's true. And I can't believe I said that like that. Y'all got questions?
Look what's happening.
It's true though. Tan suits were happening, but not those costumes. Please, somebody say something.
Does anybody have a question they want to start us off and save Ra? Yeah. There we go.
Jay, do you have a favorite moment of the book in terms of whether it be in writing it or producing it? Do you have a favorite thing that happened?
A favorite thing that happened in writing the book? Never. I have a lot of favorite moments. I talked the Shirley Chisholm moment. Well, actually, I guess I didn't make it into the book. Really, one of my favorite parts of writing the book was the Anel Ponder that Fannie Lou Hamer recalled. But there was also another moment that I really liked, and I moved it around in the book so many times, but it's in there, and you'll if you read it, you'll find it. But there was this moment where Nicole Hannah Jones, who's the author of the 1619 Project, she came to the college that I was at, and she had this like really just incredible moment that was like so quick and so funny, and I couldn't believe that I got it, that I was taking notes on it in that moment. But so that was one of my favorite. The doing the ethnography part was really my favorite part of the whole thing, because it really forced me like into the experience, right? So I was no longer just like a scholar of Black women's humor. Like I'm like now I feel myself like however much y'all laughed at my jokes at the end of the day, like I do jokes. Like my creative practice is fundamentally part of the research, writing, and teaching that I do. And so becoming that person and being comfortable with that, I think I would have to say that that's probably my favorite part of writing the book.
Ooh.
Thank you.
I was like, I gotta slide one in. What is it like to research something you love?
I mean, it's hard at times because it's comedy, you know. And when you tell people, like, yeah, I'm a researcher, I work on Black women's humor or whatever, they're like, oh, and they think it's so great. And sometimes it's like really wonderful, but it's really, you know, it's hard because you are just immersed in the thing that you love all the time. And so sometimes, you know, I got to like go away. I can't really watch comedy for a couple of weeks. I can't really watch humor. Got to stop thinking about that. But it's also an incredible gift though to be doing that which I love, to be writing about it, thinking about it, teaching about it.
Yeah, thank you.
I hear a lot of, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I hear a lot of consideration in everything you say, and I'm been thinking about what it means to be considerate so often. The impact, the context, in the greater context, the time and moment, escaping the context. I'm wondering, did the word consideration come up for you often in your writing process? And does it mean anything to you in particular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I didn't think about it. Actually, I did think about consideration. I do think about consideration often. Thank you for that question. I said a little while back, I said, I'm glad I don't have to get paid for this. Mm. And you know, one of the reasons why I'm glad is not just because it doesn't matter, like y'all gonna go away. I'm not gonna be like the comedy was the best thing, hopefully. but also that I really know what it means to be a comic. I really know what it means for a woman to be a comic, a stand-up comic. I know the sacrifices that they have to make, you know, not seeing their children, leaving their children, being out late at night, being in places where it's just so rife with misogyny and racism, and you know, and I really know what that means. And so it made me really be considerate in terms of like the work, how I produced the work, how I wrote about people, and just really like being as graceful as I could in saying, hey, I'm also a creator now. You know, it took me a long time to really be able to say, no, I'm a stand up. But at a certain point, I really felt it. And I think it was because of some of those considerations that I had to make between, you know, myself and the people who are really professionals and who give their life to this thing in a way that is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. First, thank you, Ra. Thank you, Jay, for your time and your being here. I have it's more so of a comment than a question.
We're ready. We're ready.
I do comedy. I'm non-binary, and I have a joke where I get lots of ma'am, sir. It's just like, you know, just call me a slur, right? and I guess
I know. I was like, let me give you the mic. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Come do the joke. Come on, let's go. Come on, do the joke. Let it. Come on. No, yeah.
This is my dream. It's happening.
I know. Wait, hold on. I know you don't got a pager on.
I bought a pager because I went to an estate sale and they had it and it's purple. So yeah, this way. Where is the camera? Oh, okay. Hey guys. I'm C Will, and I don't have any nipples. People always are like, confused by that, and it's just like, well, I like to give really cool like explanations for it, right? Like I say like, oh, like woke up one day and they were missing, or I lost them in the divorce, or due to the economy, I had to sell them for parts. The truth is that I got top surgery a couple years ago, and the surgeon asked me, "Hey, do you want nipples or no nipples?" And I said, "Well, which one costs less?" How many? Anybody in the audience? Any gays here? Yeah. Yeah. I am. Charis expected. I have to. It's part of the joke, so I have to say it. I am homoromantic, bisexual. I wouldn't marry a man, but I don't mind sucking dick. And I had a friend. I had a friend one time, and I sucked him off, and he was like, "Oh, snap." Okay.
The slurs.
The slur. Oh.
Fast forward.
Okay. That joke. Okay, so sorry, y'all. I thought I was a free. Okay, so I'm non-binary. They them. Most folks don't agree, right? I'll just like be out and they'll just be like, "Oh, excuse me, sir, ma'am, hey, girl," and it's just like, just call me a slur. Like, just make it easy. Everybody just call me a slur. Okay, that's the joke. So my question is, how do you call it? How do you bring in your identity? Are you a mask or like? Oh, okay. How do you just? Okay, yeah. People, butch. Okay, people assume I'm like mass or woman. This is I'm not. But like, how do you call into your identity when you like make your jokes and that kind of thing?
Thank you, C. Will,
so much
for
Ron
saying that in front of my mama. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, it's great. No, thank you. I appreciate it. No, so that's part. I have a whole chapter on that is called Butch Lives Matter, and so as the title says, so that chapter is really about what it's like for me as a sort of a butch Black woman who was trying to do comedy, and but it was based on my experience really seeing Black butch or masculine women doing comedy and really thinking about, okay, it wasn't just like, hey, how does my theory of Sass fit with what they're doing? But I saw them enacting Sass, and I saw them doing it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to really think about what that meant. And so I gave that a name called Butch Sass. And so actually, in fact, what you're naming, what you're talking about, using your body as a site to really, well, not you in particular, but one might use their body if they are butch or masculine embodied, use their body in the experiences in their bodies like that, like people being like, hey, so ma'am, sir, what are you or whatever, as a way to challenge the sort of narrowness of how we think about Black womanhood, but also to expand it at the same time. Now I realize you said you're non-binary, but I'm talking specifically about Black butch women who identify as Black butch women in one way or another.
Not the answer, just the moment.
Thank you. My question is about, like, you're talking about like the Black maternal figure, you know, the Mammy, the Michelles, and I think growing up like in Brooklyn, there's a lot of like yo mama jokes that we throw around, right? And so I think also about like young Black girls and like their adultification, right? And you know, growing up so quickly. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about like childhood innocence and like early sass of like early teen girl sass, or like kind of that, you know, trajectory, that like temporal like movement or shift that like Black girlhood and like our early Black girlhood sass, if that's a thing. And just how, yeah, like if you were thinking about that at all when you were writing this book.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. And it absolutely was, because another person, I think the first book that I read with sass in its title was a book by Joyce West Stevens called Smart and Sassy. And so it was about how young Black girls, I think they were like young Black girls in the city, working class Black girls, how they make use of sass as a form of resilience. And essentially, she was talking about how, you know, as young Black girls, they have to find ways to lodge, you know, to basically make moral evaluations and say, hey, this thing is, you know, good, bad, or otherwise, right? And so sass was one of the things that she called on. So that's how I start the introduction. In fact, there's an epigraph from that book, Sassy Conduct. And that's what I really liked. That was, I think, when I read that book, that was when I feel like I really started to understand sass as a thing that is done in the moment, and that it is for me fundamentally about language, gesture, style, and intention. And so the epigraph starts: sassy conduct is itself a strategy for resisting social devaluation. And she was talking about young Black girls. And so I think young Black girls, we really, I think people, we have experiences very young of people not only devaluing us, but subjecting us to experiences in which we need to talk back. And it's not just our mamas we need to talk back to. She can tell you about my talking back if you let her, and it wasn't just her, but to really but you need to really claim yourself. And I think that speaks to really sort of the enduring nature, the resilience of sass as a concept, is the way that it works, generationally speaking. I think, you know. So thank you for that.
So we have time for one more question, and we're going to ask our online question. So Yolanda Brown says, the question I'm asking to be considered is coming in a time when we need anything that reminds us that we are human, humane, and free, and comics remind us of that. What is something you've learned from contemporary and elder Black women comics that allows us to be world builders and futuristic?
What is it? Well, one of the things I think that I've learned, one of the main things that I think I've learned in talking to elder Black women comedians and also younger contemporary ones, and doing the practice myself, is that my is not to stifle my voice, to be true to the person who I am. And I learned it not just because they said it, but I watched them do it. I watched them do it in all these conditions that tell them, no, you can't do it. You shouldn't do it. It doesn't pay to do it. Nobody wants to hear it. And so seeing that over and over, having that experience, that's something that edifies me all the time. It lets me know that even though, you know, comedy, I mean, you know, it's not going to save the world. It's not going to save the world. But to me, this is the thing, is if you laugh at something, I always say this because I always think about it. If you have laughed at something, then that's because it has made you think about something, you know? And once you become conscious of this idea of yourself as a person who can say a thing, right? Who can and should say a thing, then you become conscious of all these other possibilities, right? You become conscious of, like, so you can't have freedom until you yourself have understood it in here inside of yourself. And I think that's one of the things that Black women comedians and Black comedy gives me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. Thank you all for being here tonight. We want to encourage you to buy this book. If you're watching online, you can buy Sass, Black Women's Humor and Humanity from Charis by clicking that teal button at the bottom center of the screen. We appreciate you, and we will send you a signed copy while supplies last. So thank you so much for watching.